Hello everybody. In the first video on the historical Christ, we looked at the Gospels and suggested that they are not necessarily true historical sources, however they do seem based on some kind of first-hand account, some kind of tradition, some kind of witness of the life of Jesus, though certainly not an eyewitness account, though the form in which they are now found is utterly corrupted and modified from original form by the touch of the literate author. In the second video, we looked at the solar cult and we showed why Syria and Assyria, that is essentially encompassing the old Phoenician state, may be both a neglected influence on early Christianity, if not the influence on early Christianity, not only due to the presence of the solar cult there, but also because Phoenicians themselves may have been responsible for the early conversion of provinces such as Britain to Christianity. Who were the Phoenicians? Well, there is no word in the Bible. It means purple traders in Greek. In the Bible, they are called Canaanites, just another set of tribes who set up their own city-states. Their lingo, Proto-Hebrew, just like the Israelite tribes. The Carthaginians spoke a kind of Hebrew as well, which was mixed up with other Hamitic tongues of North Africa over time, probably already resident there well before Dido founded Carthage, probably even earlier Carthaginians and Canaanites coming over. Now, they worshipped a sacred stone. That's right, they worshipped a sacred stone, which was Baal, which was the Lord, the stone. Look at their depictions of Baal. It can only have been the same people who erected Stonehenge, but drawing also on traditions of the Atlantic stone circle. Now, this was an early Canaanite religion. Now, there were proto-Jews all over, and this is one of the foundations and reasons for the rapid spread of Christianity. It melded easily and amalgamated with the Son Religion. Now, of course, that means Stonehenge itself is a Canaanite sun temple, a proto-Christian cathedral set up by the Hamites. I mean, look at Robert Temple's discovery of similar structures in Libya, home of the Hamites. I mean, even William Stuckley, who investigated the structure centuries ago and was both a druid and a priest, saw something of a cathedral in Stonehenge. The Canaanites, they were proud and they were arrogant. Alexander the Great almost had as much trouble taking Canaanite Tyre as he did the entire Persian Empire. They lived in these city-states on the coast. Of course, city-states are wealthy and can always go against larger land empires, but only if they are sustained by the trade of their ships. And what greater traders were they than the traders under Shalmaneser who reached America, had mines in America? Phoenicia lived under Assyrian rule and prevailed after the fall of Assyria. So why wouldn't the Jews living there say that Solomon was actually their rightful king? He was one of us. He was king of their mines in America. I mean, they were the ones who gave those mines to Solomon, gave him the knowledge of mines in America, even if Solomon himself was probably Assyrian Shalmaneser, as seen in the previous video. I mean, there's even a Christ-like figure in the pagan ideas of the Vikings in the north, the Germanics. An immortal young man skewered by a mistletoe spear, Balder. There was a pre-existing foundation across the empire, right across the empire, thanks to prior ideas centered around Jesus replacing the green man, the man who is resurrected every year and who dies every year, into which Christianity could easily spread. You see, we've all been mesmerized by the temple and Judea, but that's just a legacy of the Exodus. The temple was merely built to hold the ark. The ark itself was some strange artifacts coming out of Egypt. That is only one tribe of the Jews, and there were so many tribes, many more than 12. There were hundreds of them, and they were all over. You see, the Jewish world was much larger, probably encompassing ancient UK as well. evidenced by Baal festivals such as Beltane and other ideas. I've even speculated that Belfast must be named after Baal and means Baal's fortress, Baal's fastness. I even located this fortress. It's basically a huge hill overlooking the city, an enormous hill with a glorious cave, which could have been used for ancient Mithraic, Iranian, Aryan style worship, particularly as Ireland is named after the Aryans, Ire. But I would guess people just don't want to know what is obvious, so they say Belfast is named after an estuary or something like that. We will now go deeper into this. We look to the Roman Emperor Eligabelus, possibly a corruption of Eligabelus, and we see something really interesting. He lived for only about 20 years, 202 to 222 AD. Eligabelus was what he was called after his death. It means sun in two different languages, or sun, stone, or whatever god Gabelus was supposed to represent. Actually, Gabelus was a bit of both. He was the sun and the stone because he was something like what you see at Stonehenge. But in life, Eligabelus was Marcus Aurelius Antonius Augustus, a member of the Severan dynasty. These were actual Syrian-based Romans, probably intermarried with older monarchies of the East, who came to power as a result of the civil war of 197. In 193, there were 5 emperors in 1 year, all vying for power, with Lord of the Rings-like names: Claudius the White, Priscenius the Black, and Severus, and a few others. Remember that horrible Emperor Commodus in Gladiator? He suffered that old Julio-Claudian need to be on the stage, the centre of attention, though in his case it was the arena. Legend says he was killed in the Roman arena, though we do not know the circumstance. Roman history becomes murky after Marcus Aurelius. It all happened just after his assassination, and it ended the dynasty of Marcus Aurelius. Now, things would start to change. Eligabelus was already a high priest of the sun god in Emesa. You can see the temple of Emesa actually had a holy stone at its heart. Obviously an Eastern religion as it relates to the religion of the Aryans, where we see an omphalos in Delphi, for instance, the King's Stone at Tara, and the Shiva Linga of India. The whole stone religion in the UK, the Brutus Stone, Stone of Scone, Blarney Stone, Stone Circles, Healing Stones of Stonehenge. Hey, that's all Hamitic stuff spread around by the Proto-Phoenicians, who emerged from exactly the same location but centuries earlier. They even took the Crescent religion to Ireland in deeply ancient times. I mean, look at a bird's eye view of Newgrange. I think the reason this religion was found on the Atlantic coast up to the Baltic was because Phoenicians spread it around, and their predecessors. They loved the UK as it contained metal, and it was the stepping stone to America. The Phoenicians are the link between the cocaine tobacco mummies of Egypt around 1000 BC and the New World. Solomon may have been their king, which is why I made videos saying the Lake Superior mines must have been at least on a trading route with Solomon, or actually a king of Assyria's fleet. As their Baal-worshipping civilization, their rock-worshipping civilization, wherever it sprung up, was destroyed over and over by the Romans, all this is forgotten. I think Solomon's or Shalmaneser's mines were likely also the Potosi areas of South America, or the mines of Lake Superior. That's Shalmaneser's mines in America. They naturally brought back tobacco, cocaine, and other substances. The potato and chili must also have been in Europe under other names, and we haven't realized it yet. I mean, simply find old Roman food words that we cannot translate, I suppose, and we might see this, but I imagine it all vanished anyway in the super catastrophe which must have utterly destroyed Europe during the recent Dark Ages, which hit between the end of West Rome and 1000 AD. More on this in future videos. Roslin Chapel, Scotland, built before Columbus, shows American corn, which is bizarre. This was, I speculate, engineered by GMO in deeply ancient times from wheat or other grass, hence remembered as a gift of the gods. That is, the blonde long skulls. Corn is not paleo, it's not natural. Eat it and watch your teeth rot and possibly hair fall out as the blood sugar goes up. Yet it's supposedly healthy veggie food. So what's going on? These longheads were the original blondes and redheads, the original world aristocrats of tens of thousands of years ago. In afternoon conversation, they would word utterances more profound and earth-shaking than that found in the wisdom of the books of the wisest sages known today. The blonde gene has continued, but not necessarily the skull type. I say they were blonde because you look at so many blondes even today with their long skulls and which do look weird to me, but not nearly as weird as what once has been. Humans really do change a lot over time. A Lord of the Rings type world was once reality. Dark Ages don't just hit because the Vikings go wild. Pre-Vikings must have been attacking Rome all the time, yet the Romans easily brushed them aside. Most of those so-called Germanic invasions were simply Viking attacks. Look at the Vandals. Pure Vikings, but in an earlier age. After the Dark Ages, America was forgotten by the West. A secret location. That's what America was. It was a secret location that only some people could get to. Thus it belonged to the king himself, to Solomon. Just like America was Spain's little secret until the Portuguese worked out how to use the trade winds. It all speaks of the old trade with America that Columbus rediscovered by reading old books, then selling the information to Spain. But we digress, for we are talking about the Syrian Son Religion. Eligabelus, Roman Sun Emperor, was also the name of the Syrian mountain god El, and then it's the name of the Syrian mountain god El, and then Gabelus, the mountain god. That's what Gabelus is. Literally, I think it's very similar to the Pyramid religion. It's also pretty close to the Moses religion as well as the Samaritan religion of mountain-worshipping Jews, one of whom was persecuted by Pontius Pilate historically. Possibly this was later mixed into the Jesus story, what became the Jesus story. Now, Eligabelus actually brought a statue of this god to Rome. I mean, how unbelievable was this? He built a temple on the east face of the Palatine Hill called the Eligabelium for the rising sun, just like cathedrals and churches facing east, or medieval people facing east when they pray. They thought they were doing it to face Jerusalem throughout the Middle Ages. Actually, they were facing the rising sun. Jerusalem being just an excuse for the lower acolytes and revealed only to higher initiates. The hierarchy would have been sun worship up top, the Romans, and Christians in the lower ranks. Like a scene out of the 70s British TV show I, Claudius, senators were forced on pain of death to watch a spectacle of Eligabelus prancing around the statue to the tune of cymbals and drums. He placed his holy stone on a chariot adorned with jewels and gold and carted it around Rome. He actually walked in front of the chariot, walking backwards, facing his god as it proceeded around the capital. And his god, basically Baal. It was as if Carthage had conquered Rome. It was the same religion in more recent times as the people who set up Stonehenge followed. I would go as far to say that the religion of stone and sun is why obelisks were actually brought to Rome on special obelisk-bearing ships. I mean, you look at the way the St. Peter's forecourt is laid out. Why did Renaissance people copy an identical Roman practice, setting up some kind of Sol Invictus religion in the 1600s in St. Peter's Square? It looks like Stonehenge. I think they were just rebuilding old demolished structures, and St. Peter's Square is just a reaffirmation of the Sol Invictus religion. This is Christian, yet I see Stonehenge and the solar religion here. You just look at the thing. This is the Sol Invictus religion. And yes, this was a product of the Renaissance. I wonder how much the Hermetic Egyptian ideas picked up by heretic Savonarola intervened. He was burned at the stake for spouting Egyptian doctrines in public. Yet we see Egypt formalized in Roman architecture built rather recently. Stonehenge, too, must have been used as a Christian temple by the Romans who lived nearby a whole 4 centuries of its unknown past. Don't tell me the Romans ignored this glorious structure. I don't believe that. Heck, maybe the whole layout is Roman, as suggested by Inigo Jones, who was the chief architect in the time of Henry VIII. Perhaps it was they, the Romans, who erected an altar out of white stone, the altar stone, now buried by a collapsed Sarsen for Christian purposes, sanctifying an obviously earlier Hamitic monument. Now, Eligabelus also stated that all Christians, Jews, and Samaritans must henceforth worship in his temple in Rome. Probably because he saw them all as related religions. Maybe he saw them as branch offices of his own Son cult. I mean, how interesting would that be? This means that Christians were actually worshipping Baal, a stone, for at least a couple of years in Rome in the early days. I mean, the evidence is absolutely clear on this. He said, Christians worship in my temple. I mean, there you go. However, Eligabelus was soon killed, and his religious ideas were officially reversed. Or were they? You see, Eligabelus also worshipped the sun. Put the sun and stone together, what do you have? You have solstice alignments and so forth. It was therefore also a solstice religion of resurrection. It was a very ancient religion. This very ancient religion which conquered the UK long ago. In fact, the legend has been that the UK was always Christian, and this is why it was apparently the first land to officially convert to Christianity in the empire. It was just more of the same. Although the cult of Eligabelus was returned to Emesa as its base, Eligabelus had also placed the sun as supreme over Jupiter, and the idea took over. The cult was Romanized to Sol Invictus, and it acquired a priesthood. I suppose anyone who was Christian or Jewish could not worship in the sun temples free of any concern. They would have looked at pictures of Apollo on the walls. Sunday became the holy day. We don't know a lot about Sol Invictus. The problem is that everything from later Rome has been destroyed, including many historical records. That empire itself was an empire struggling along for centuries, a long, slow decline, so we don't really know if Sol Invictus was a direct transfer of the Eligabelus cult. Sol Invictus was a patron of soldiers. Now, the Coliseum was built by Emperor Domitian. He apparently spent his time pulling wings out of flies. People love gossip like this. Hell, I'm doing it now. But I suppose the idea was concocted by early Christians whom Domitian was sacrificing in the arena. You see, the reason the Colosseum was called that was because it was next to a colossal statue of Nero, built by Nero himself, as Apollo, the sun god. This, therefore, and no one mentions this, must have become thereafter the first statue of Christ. It was the biggest statue in Rome, the biggest statue in the empire. The Colossus of Rhodes, I believe, was no more. This was absolutely enormous. This was later the statue of Sol, and we are actually not sure if it was still standing or not. We don't know quite when it was demolished, but it's certainly gone now. But that was a symbol of Rome. This enormous statue of naked Nero became the sun god. So that was what Rome looked like. It wasn't just colosseums and statues like we see today. It was this huge thing. If we look at later Rome, we see the Son Religion taking over. Up to the time of Caesar's assassination, Romans were proud of their republic and associated it with their manhood and strength. They didn't need any pathetic king telling them what to do, because they had their own intelligence and their own strength. And they saw weakness and backwardness in the monarchies of the East. And yet, this is what they slowly turned into through, I guess, interbreeding with the Eastern dynasties. It all started with Augustus, who was a kind of dictator. a dictator who refused to step down. By the time of Nero and Caligula, we had emperors who wanted to be worshipped on stage, taking the limelight. Then we have lots of names associated with gold, which is the colour of the sun. We have Marcus Aurelius, or Golden Marcus. After him came the start of the decline, though ironically Dio Cassius, the Roman historian, stated that everything went from gold to rusty iron after his rule. They all wanted to have gold associated with their name. Why? We have emperors such as Aurelion, whose coinage depicts a man with a crown, yet the crown has the solar spikes of Apollo, and we actually do see this kind of imagery from the Commagene kingdom, even as early as the 1st century and even earlier than that. And from the same area, we have in the 3rd century the magnificent Queen Zenobia, whom a few have heard of. The recently destroyed ruins of Palmyra, her capital, which she took from the Romans, are associated with her short-lived empire. If you want an idea of what she was like, imagine a cross between Xena Warrior Princess, whose name seems to be inspired by Zenobia, and fictional She of the book of that name by Rider Haggard. Then again, she might have just being a pushy, horrible, annoying, greedy little person with a bit too much testosterone. Who knows? Anyway, Zenobia claimed Sohemus as her ancestor, and therefore she was claiming pedigree, and indeed her empire, which she grabbed away from a troubled, plagued, anthrax and Ebola-ridden Rome of the 3rd century. Her Syrian pedigree meant she was also probably related to Severus and Eligabelus, so why not start her own empire? Why not split from Rome? Her empire reached from Pontus to Egypt, and yes, she even conquered Egypt as well. I guess she had her own religion. Now, Zenobia was her Roman name, Septima Zenobia. In her own language, she was Bat Zabai. She lived 240 to 74 AD, some decades, 2 generations, I suppose, after Eligabelus was around. Now, after heavy fighting with Emperor Golden One, or Aurelion as he was called, probably named after the sun god, and after whom the city of Orleans was named, was victorious in reconquering a breakaway region in the west, which might have been confused with Arthur's empire in Geoffrey of Monmouth. Aurelian then entered Asia Minor. After he was merciful to the surrendered city of Tyana, other cities fell very quickly, and after 3 battles, the Asian legions of Zenobia just melted away. Zenobia was placed in golden chains and paraded through Rome. Others say she met a cruel death. For some reason, the history of later Rome is extraordinarily confused and weird. Different chroniclers saying different things, no longer agreeing with each other. It's as if we're looking at that world through a murky lens, but early Rome through a sharp and in-focus lens. I guess it's all caused by too much Mandela effect in the diseased and plague-ridden minds of the later Romans, desperately switching to Christianity as a form of escape, as a last gasp to save their eternal souls, convinced their temporal empire was utterly doomed. They could do the math, they saw what was happening. Plague after plague had decimated the empire, plagues never seen before in history, probably because ancient Egyptian ruins were being excavated, releasing ancient pathogens. There was also worldwide travel once again, and new viruses were spreading around. Now, Zenobia was an archaeologist. She was interested in her Ptolemaic ancestors as well, and according to Wikipedia, she also restored the Colossus of Memnon, sealing up the cracks in the possible geopolymer so it could no longer sing as the wind passed through it. She did not persecute the Christians, but accommodated them. If you look at the statues over at the Commagene Pyramid Mount Nemrut, it looks like a huge pyramid, huge white pyramid. You can see what's going on. These are her ancestors, and she probably restored this also with Roman technology. It looks very much like the Colossi. I think the Romans, trying to escape the plague, sailed into the Atlantic. They took their Christianity Son Religion with them. They were the Viracocha. Like Aurelian and other emperors of the time, they fancied themselves as solar deities and tried to set up new empires in America. This is why the Viracocha is known as the sun god, And many of the ruins at Tiwanaku do date to Roman times. I do not think this is any coincidence at all. Zenobia was herself probably Jewish. She's described as Jewish. Her rebellion was basically the Kittos War Mark II of 150 years earlier. And she may have been a Mithra devotee. I see lots of similarities, and the religion was already combined with Sol Invictus in her time. Firstly, it's established that Roman Mithra is a lot different to Iranian Mithra. They are possibly divergent traditions based on some ancient primordial name, a bit like Odin on one hand and Buddha on the other. Let's say a little about Mithra. Mithraism is basically Vulcan fallen angel worship. Long ago, some astronaut fell out of heaven and lay buried under crashed wreckage, perhaps. I think that Mithraism must have been incorporated into Christianity as Easter, as it was thought that one day this crashed person, this fallen angel, would return to heaven and be resurrected. Now, I established in another video that Easter is basically, it's not really Ishtar, but it's east. It's facing the east. It's east-facing religion. It's facing the rising sun in the east as it resurrects. Easter is also associated with the Last Supper, and I think Mithraism is both of these elements. Mithraism is Easter. Mithraic halls are all underground or under buildings. Mithra emerges in the mythology that we can read from the surviving imagery from a stone. He slays a bull, he has a feast with the gods, and that's about all we know. He's very similar to the stone monkey of Asia. Asia, of course, another word for east. We're talking about the east. Basically, a jester. He's basically Loki or Lucifer. Now, Last Suppers would have been held every year in these Mithraic underground rooms or tombs. You can see the Roman couches for solemn parties to be held. Every room is shaped like an Egyptian tomb or an Etruscan tomb, so that people could take part in the resurrection of the sun or the slain bull, representing the green man. That's Mithraism, I think. In addition, ancient Egyptians likewise had parties in the tombs of their ancestors every year. The Etruscans surely did as well. I think it's a nice touch, and that's again very similar to Mithraism. Mithraism is probably very old, and a lot of their ritual is localized to the area in which it is found. The original Easter tradition is associated with stone eggs and spheres, as seen at the ziggurat at Sardinia, which I think has the oldest Easter egg in front of it. You can see it clearly in the picture. So you've got the mountain, you've got the Easter egg. It's all the same old religion, as well as an egg-shaped rock at Glastonbury, which no one ever talks about. From this, the deity was hatched, reborn. That's Easter, that's Mithra. Mithraism is also initiation in 7 stages. Look at the sacraments of Catholicism, stages of initiation, it's all blended together. Mithraism would be entering this underworld tomb-like temple every year for a Last Supper. So you can see why this religion was popular with soldiers. Because they're already dead. Once you hit the battlefield, their souls are already prepared. They've visited the underworld already. Easter was to prepare your soul to be reborn in this world or the next. You can see how these non-Christian-like ideas could have been easily amalgamated into what we associate with Christianity today. The idea of Christ coming back for the end of the world merged with the idea of a deity returning every single year. People enjoy Easter, ignore the rising sun of the east, look for chocolate eggs, ignore this earliest of Easter bunnies on this Egyptian relief, which combines it with the snake and tree of Eden, and are happy. Christians no longer actually expect Christ to return as a sign of the end of the world, because St. Paul's dictum to simply believe in Christ is sufficient. Perhaps St. Paul brought that dictum out to even stop the persecution by Romans, who are obviously treating early Christians as subversives. I hope you have enjoyed part 3. Please stay tuned for part 4. As we go through these videos, I'm trying to dispel the myths and non-essentials so we can get to the heart of the matter of early Christianity and reveal the historical Jesus and the historical Messiah. It's going to be a big surprise, I absolutely promise you. You might be very shocked indeed. Stay tuned, it is going to be fun. Well, hello everyone. It's time to look at this. I mean, I've got some merch here, so unboxing video. And let's see what I ordered. I ordered some of my own merch. So that's from Spreadshirt, and I was actually curious to see whether they would charge an extra fee for shipping. They don't, even though it's from USA. So it's good. Oh, there we go. Coupon code. You can use that if you like. There you go. How good is that? But anyway, so let's have a look, shall we? Okay. Well. So you see this. There we go. Looks alright. Yep, Dr. Charles show. Woohoo! And what's in here? Check this out. Okay. Check that out. Now guess what this is, guys? Guess what this is? Oh, come on, why don't you open? Okay, are we ready for the great unveiling? Woo! Woo! Guess what this is? Well, it's quite obvious now, isn't it? But, there we go. Look at that. How good is that? So basically, there it is, the Dr. Charles show. What's going on here? This is really weird. This is just unbelievable. So how about that? My official thing. So I'll have this next to me while I'm making my videos in future. Yeah, be drinking coffee from here. Just can't wait. So that's some of my merch. That's a nice t-shirt. How good is that? Okay, guys. I think that's absolutely unbelievable. I'm going to wear this to conferences or something if I go to any of those UFO conferences. Anyway, guys, catch you later. See you. Bye-bye.